treasure is a freedom song. Born of desire for right or wrong. Inner motives taking all. Choose your strength or choose your fall. Set the arrow, draw the bow. I wanna guide you. In the push of this and the pull of that, aim true, be clear, and then the book begins, and then the book begins. Life is darkness, save for dreams. Dreams will fade, save for your strength. Strength is empty, save for love. Love will save you should you fall. Set the arrow, draw the bow.
Welcome to Every Friday with Dan and Olivia. I'm Dan Miles.
And I'm Olivia Darbo. Hi.
We've been listening to the music of Dale Ladoucer. It was called And Then the Work Begins. Kind of a Dream of the Blue Turtles vibe happening there. Kind of reminds me of when Branford Marsalis was working with Sting. Definitely the work of an atypical artist. Joining us on the Skype from the Great White North, Edmonton, Alberta to be exact, to talk about her atypicalness is Dale Ladoucer. Welcome.
Oh, so good to be here with the both of you. Hallelujah.
You're our second female on the show. I'm so excited. And, ironically enough, you happen to be, a consummate musician and songwriter. So that's even more exciting to, I'm sure, myself and all of our listeners.
Thanks. Takes one to know one.
Well, thank you. I'm not as familiar with your music as Dan is, but from what I've heard from it, it's definitely a kindred spirit sense that I get from you. And I have all kinds of questions that I want to ask you. But I'll let Dan start, and I'll sort of inch my way in there.
Okay.
As they say.
I think that the kindred spirit thing is well said. I see some similarities in you guys as writers and performers and singers. But before we get into Dale's musical endeavors, I want to flash back to our examination of happiness and remind everybody the response that Dale sent in. You said, as I attempt to submit something of meaning in response to the enigmatic topic happiness, it's ironic that I find myself trying to grasp meaning intangible at one of the happiest times in my life. I've been pretty damn lucky in the happiness quotient, and I don't like to mention that often in fear of having the gods notice the unfair share. I've had the opportunity to pursue dreams with a goodly amount of success. I'm blessed with a man of integrity whom I love and who, in spite of my goofiness, loves me. My daughter is emerging from teenhood relatively unscathed, and we're making each other laugh in surprisingly sophisticated ways. Oh, I look forward to talking about that. Kneading bread fills my soul with happiness. I remember that striking a chord with Olivia at the time. Finding a cool groove makes my heart soar with happiness. Filling our wood stove with cedar while a snowstorm rages outside gives me a happiness so few in this world know. The feeling of gratitude for blessings beyond those I deserve. Thank you for the inspired topic, peace and grooviness. So is that ringing a bell with you, Olivia?
Oh, yeah, especially the wood stove. You're a bread maker.
Closer to the earth. Honestly, I don't know what it is, but I love making bread. I gift bread. I don't know. There's something very almost sacred about it.
Completely sacred. I mean, it's a kind of a metaphor for life, really. I would think when you're really either writing a song or, just churning on things. I bet you go right in the kitchen and start to bake a loaf, and just the process. It's ceremonial, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. I can't cook to save my life, but man, I can bake a fine loaf of bread.
I got a lot of, especially out of your depiction of what happiness was, and there was a lot obviously in the metaphor of bread, but also, whilst I was watching your the link that Dan sent me, I really got a sense from what I watched, not only about how special your music is, and I'm so interested in asking you about your medieval album, because not only do I think that's an incredibly epic vision musically, I that sensibility is very much, I hear that in your music anyway, and the groove part I really get, finding a really great groove. But so I want to talk about that, but I love that you mentioned your partner in crime is your husband, right? Is he the father of your child?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's I loved how he some of the things that he said about you. He spoke about you making some really, interesting choices, that you're clearly very unique, and that you could have maybe taken a different route as a songwriter and been more mainstream, but you took your own rite of passage, which was your rite of truth, and what really spoke to you musically, which I think ultimately keeps music exciting for you, I'm sure, where you want to branch out into theme albums and, expanding your horizons constantly.
Yeah. I don't think I could have become a mainstream artist, because I usually, when I'm writing, the way I have found truth in writing music is a stream of consciousness style, where you channel the gods. You start with a groove and then you channel the words. You're kind of like, how a sculptor romances the stone. Well, you kind of romance the air with sounds, and the words just come, and who knows where they come from. I've had songs literally pour out of the end of my pen, and then you just have to go, wow, thank whoever the powers are that was gifted to me, and you're just merely the vehicle by which the music is spawned. But I value very much people that can write a hit song, or at least a cohesive pop song. But I've never been able to. I can't make that work. I don't know why.
Mm-hmm. I totally hear you, and I don't. Some people may say, "Oh, well, that's a blessing and a curse," or the other way around. But I think. Ultimately, yeah, I think as a musician, as any kind of artist, you do kind of come to that fork in the road where you go, I'm going to make an executive decision here for myself in terms of what's going to continue bringing me joy out of being a vessel. You were talking a little bit about being a channeler. And do you ever find, Dale, when you write that, there is something coming through you? Have you had both experiences as a songwriter where, I've even had dreams where a song comes to me in my dreams, and I mean that's the most incredible experience. It doesn't happen all the time, but to me, I feel like that voice is your higher power, and it makes sense that would come to you sometimes in a dream, because you're so relaxed in that state of REM when you're sleeping that that vessel is even that more open. But can you tell the difference between, okay, if I keep going with this and just not think about it and let the pen write itself and let the chords come through me, that maybe this song is already written, but it's just choosing to come through my perspective, my point of view, or do you go, okay, this is a song where I could channel it, but I want to be more of a technician about it and go maybe a slightly different route with it?
Excellent question. I see them as almost like strands of light or audio light, where, I don't, it's funny how you can visualize while you're in musical moments. I milk the channel from the gods as much as I can. And when it dries out, it's almost like that. Hemingway used to write the first draft with your heart, write the second draft with your head. I will get out until it sounds contrived as much as I can. And then I have to step away for a moment or two, and then I'll come back to it, and I record everything. And it's just those moments where you may hesitate on a phrase, or whether you push a phrase, just makes that phrase, So I record everything as soon as it is happening.
And it's funny that you say that you don't know if you're capable of being a commercial singer-songwriter. I'm sure that you could, but sometimes I think what overtakes one's mind as an artist, if you're writing music, is you keep going back to what inspires you musically. There is a structure from what I can hear to your songs, but it's a little bit more freelance, which I think, commercial singer-songwriters, they stick to a formula. So I think what I noticed between you and I, a similarity is I think we kind of go for the love and the joy of what we do rather than the formulaic approach, right? I mean, it's not South Pacific, right? We're not writing. I mentioned that because Trey and Matt, wrote obviously the Book of Mormon, and they actually distinctively followed South Pacific as their formula, as their Bible. Oh. And incidentally, it has everything to do with why that show succeeded, because it's a built-in formula that just can't go wrong. And with that comes, lots of success, lots of dollars and what have you. But I think if you're in it for the actual personal journey, I think that also coincidentally happens to kind of coincide with the kind of music that we both sort of write, which is sort of timeless, and it can go anywhere. There's no rules or regulations, so to speak, because when there are, I find I just get too boxed in.
Yeah, you said personal journey. I love the quote from Tom Waits that I blew it up from a Rolling Stone magazine interview, and I framed it because it resonated so strongly. It says, you got to work on yourself more than you work on the music. Then whenever you're aiming at, you'll be able to hit between the eyes.
Ah, love that.
Yeah.
I want to interject that we mentioned your husband, and I want to be specific about what he does. I would say the three words would be drummer, writer, and producer. I mean, he produces music, he writes, he plays the drums. Are those his main three hats? He's a studio engineer. He has a lot of hats, but he's the most musical drummer I've ever met. And not to, I don't know what your experience has been, but I've played with a lot of different drummers, and absolutely by far he's my favorite. But it's amazing how many drummers, I don't know whether it's part of the craft, whether they wax and wane with the groove, but I don't know, we really click. That's probably why I married him. No.
Yeah, exactly. Good reason. Is he playing the drums on the last track that we heard? Yeah. Because he's very in sync.
Yeah. We're totally together, and the stick has 5 bass strings, and so I got the bass hand going, and then that guitar-esque melody side of the stick. So I have that going, but and the remarkable Brett Miles on saxophone. But I find that one of the most valuable things that in playing with Bill is that when I'm running the initial song by him, he won't let any pedestrian lyrics get by. He's like, "What the hell do you mean by that?" Well, I mean, like, what is that? And he knows, he can identify. I'm a little guilty of filler lyrics every now and then, you get, hell, it can't all be profound, right? But lyrics, I'll just keep that there, and then I'll fix it later, and then it never gets fixed until he calls me out.
Better to nip it in the bud early. No, I couldn't agree more.
Well, in the happiness speech, you talked about your husband, and you also talked about your relationship with your daughter. How old is she now?
She is now 15. And
wow.
I often say 15 going on 20, but you know what? She's a real old soul.
Yes, my son is too. It's astounding sometimes. They look right through you as children always do, but it's such a deep look. It's hard to put into words really, but I do think they're our greatest teachers. But But
Yes.
how wonderful that and I'm sure she's a musician too, right? If both her parents are.
Well, she's very musical, and she has she's been investigating the cello and the flute and that, but she's not into performing. As long as she doesn't end up being growing up to be a CEO for Dow, I'll be fine. This year for Christmas, her biggest present that she was looking forward to was a spinning wheel. For her birthday, we gave her the Foxfire books. Like, she's really into trying to keep those old skills going. I don't know what it is, but she loves the forest. You know, like she's just an old soul. You know.
Well, she sounds like a bit of a sort of medieval fairy, like you.
Oh, well, when we went to a couple of years ago with my medieval band, the Ancient Jammers, we got to play for the biggest medieval festival in Europe. It was in Visby. And the Ancient Jammers are made up of two Swedes. And it was in Sweden. They brought us over, and we got to play to like 8,000 half-naked Swedes on the Baltic Sea. And it was...
Oh, my God.
And Ramsey came, and she just loved it. She loved the culture. She loved the land. She loved the politics. I mean, it was amazing.
That's wonderful. You know, you must tell her about a place called the New Forest, which is a forest that recently was discovered in England. But it is a medieval forest, and they have like little. I'm not kidding. You'd probably really dig it too. You know, just wild ponies that just.
Oh.
Yeah, you must Google it. It's called the New Forest, and it's exactly what you would imagine. It's sort of like Gothic looking, you know, and part of it is on these very high cliffs like Dover, yet it's got the you know, lovely kind of green grass everywhere, and then there's like little lakes in the middle of a village, you know, with these ponies. Nobody knows where these ponies come from, but you know, it's one of the most recent discovered land masses with a forest, but a ye old English forest with very, very high trees, you know, and all that wonderful medieval stuff.
Beautiful.
Knights of the Round Table and Merlin and all that stuff, which I love. You know, I think it's one of the greatest parts of our Celtic history in England.
It was when music was still very melodic. I think that, you know, like, because they based it from the influences and environment around them, birds and the wind and stuff. Do you notice how now, like, since we have been more and more removed from nature and more industrial, a lot of our music is reflecting that, the more industrial and synthetic sounds. It's interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know about you. Well, I mean, I'm going to take my intuition is telling me,
take it,
based on what I hear from your music, that you'd rather go back than forward in terms of what turns you on musically.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of making, I'm thinking of like, I just met with a music producer the other day, and we were talking about doing a prog album, like a modern prog album, but actually really giving it a theme again, you know, the way that really the great albums in the sort of 60s and 70s did. But also mixing in that, you know, possibly, you know, I've been writing a lot of torch songs lately, you know, which are sort of akin to romance and the war, and when men and women, though there was a war going on, one of it's interesting. I think we had a guest. I forget his name right now, and Dan will probably remind me. But I think he mentioned something which I really took with me about what happened in wars between men and women. Is there was a longing coming out of the sense that they weren't sure when they were going to see each other again, and so through that stemmed this very romantic music. I mean, of the likes of sort of Irving Berlin and George Gershwin and that's really what those songs are about. And to me, medieval music and torch song music is kind of the most romantic music that there still is, because it's from the heart, and it's also parallels with what was going on historically. I mean, you talk about, they were talking, you know, medieval music is talking about the environment and the birds and the bees and the trees, and so they were reflecting on that, and therefore it was coming through musically. Melodies, I believe, and I hear that a lot in your music, are a direct reflection of what you're getting back from society, or more importantly, your environment.
Yeah.
So as things get more industrial sounding, the melodies seem to dissipate more. They don't seem to be. I'm not sort of knocking more industrial music that's out there today. Some of it I really love, and I think you can marry the two. I think you can still have a really strong melody with an industrial loop behind it, or a more hyper modern production. But I don't know. There's something so beautiful to me about continuing to go back as far as you possibly can, even biblical times. I would be interested to hear what music was like back when disciples were around.
The earliest song ever found, and I think I picked it up because not only did I like the melody, but I liked the irony of playing it on the newest instrument there is. The earliest song ever found, and it was written in the 12th century. It's called Finizi Fiu, and it was written. I learned it from these two monks singing these two lines. And so one hand does the one line and the other hand does the other line. And this was at a time when, dissonance, you could go to jail.
Exactly.
The brig, right, for any kind of dissonance or jazzy coolness. But that kind of stuff, having that influence wash through the being that is yours in the 21st century is gotta be incredible.
There was a time when everything was sung in unison. Let alone dissonance, and even a harmony, even like a root and a third was considered noise. Like you're singing two different things at the same time. You can't do that. So the Gregorian chants would start out, everybody just singing the same note. Might be an octave, maybe, but it was like that. But to Olivia's point about looking forward and looking backward, and to Dale's husband's point about her going her own way, and Dale just alluded to it, we need to talk about your instrument of choice, which is the Chapman stick. Listeners of my other show know I had Steve Adelson, who's a mutual friend of ours, come on and give us a big, long explanation of what it is, but we're going to get that from you as well. I've seen a photo of you with Steve and Tony Levin, who a lot of people know from his work with Peter Gabriel. I've seen a photo of you with Peter Gabriel as well. Is it true that all Chapman stick players know each other?
Almost.
It's a small community. Why don't you explain how that instrument operates? Because when you were just telling us about learning this old piece of music with two parts and using one hand for each part, you can't really do that unless you have a Chapman stick or, let's say, a piano. So
yes, it's very much like that.
Give us the tutorial.
Yeah, my favorite comparison by critic Mike Ross was it's the Rubik's Cube of the instrument world. It's mine is a standard stick. I mean, there's all sorts of monsters of like Alan Holdsworth has a double guitar stick. But the cool thing is that it's a stereo instrument. I have 5 bass strings and 5 melody strings. And it's an embrace. So my left hand usually, like you can play anything, that's the lovely thing about a new instrument, is that you have the opportunity to be a pioneer in your own way. But the classic way to play it is your bass hand. The left hand is your bass hand, and the heavier strings are in the center. So once you get your brain around it, you can play a bass line and a melody chord on the one side. There's this song called Cruise Night that Daniel Cain wrote that I love, starting with or demoing the stick with bass line and chunk, chunk, pom, pom, chunk, chunk, and so that's one hand. And then you do the melody side, which can be an entirely independent melodic line, like a bow doo doo doo, and you get that together. And I mean, it's the most amazing instrument to come along since the invention of the guitar 300 years ago.
Is it kind of like playing a 12-string at times?
Well, that's still like a 12-string guitar. That's one hand anchored to the other still. So This is like a piano mostly. When you peek into the back side of the piano and you see the little hammers hitting the strings?
Yes.
That's what my fingers are doing.
You just tap it the way you'd play a piano note, but it's set up like a guitar string with a fret. And as Dale said, it's strung completely different. That's the Rubik's Cube angle. Because instead of going from the low notes to the high notes, by putting those thick strings in the middle, you can be playing a high note and a low note without having to move your hands very far apart. And I had a long talk with Steve about how it's tuned and the different alternate.
Yeah, mine is standard, descending fourths and ascending fifths. I'm an ear player, so that stuff, I know enough theory to communicate with other musicians, but so mine is a standard stick, but it's really quite a remarkable. It was a very inspired moment when Emmett Chapman brought the instrument upward, and there's a clip on the back, so it's played like it's close to my heart, in many ways.
I'm sure that the instrument itself inspires you to write the kind of music. So it's like that you do. So you've really met your match. What a beautiful sort of synergy to have with an instrument where you can just sort of play your feelings to exactly the way you feel them, It's like it's like your own language.
Completely. I'm so glad that you made that point. I started on guitar, and it was I didn't have I love like Mark Knopfler as guitar player and stuff, and I would love to have been a guitar player, but I didn't have a rapport. And then I saw that documentary on the BBC years ago. You remember that Peter Gabriel song "Shock the Monkey"? Yeah. It was like 19.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Tony Levin gets on and started talking about the instrument, and it was cathartic. It was inspired, and I just started hunting for one. Yeah, it's definitely the instrument I learned how to be a musician on.
It reminds me to compare it to, not to digress, but that's what this show is really all about, isn't it? So I just had a hit off something which was, in the world of Pilates, there's also a departure to a thing called gyrotonics, which I don't know if you've ever heard of it, but it's like not unlike the reformer, which is, where you lay down on this kind of bed, so to speak, with these kind of devices, and, you work out and you do kind of downward dog poses and stuff. But then if you get into the world of gyrotonics, it allows you to stretch that much more. Incidentally, it was invented by a dancer who was told that they couldn't dance anymore. And it was generated, this device was generated by this dancer's just he was not going to take no for an answer. He's like, no, I was born to dance. Okay, I've had an accident, an injury, what have you, but you can't tell me that I'm not going to be able to dance. So he was so passionate and devoted to finding a way to be able to get back on his feet that he discovered and built this gyrotonics device, which allowed him to work out his muscles and stretch, and actually opened up different muscles in his body that he didn't even use prior to in his dance career. So
that's meant to be.
Yeah. So it kind of reminded me that it was your passion of listening to this man, sort of break it down in this brilliant way that, it just galvanized something inside you to kind of take it on and learn it. And ultimately, I'm sure become a better, you just to keep evolving in your craft of songwriting and playing.
You're right. The tone of the music I play is absolutely, I think that, it tends to be really, really jazzy. And for an unschooled player, it's bizarre how jazzy. Bill will say, oh my God, that's an augmented 9 with an add 13 and a blah, blah, augmented, diminished, perverted, chord. Who knows? Yeah. But somehow it's because I just throw my fingers on the neck and see what happens.
It's also essentially, Dale, it's a bass instrument, right? So you're getting these grooves that you're able to discover and find, right? These riff grooves that, but then it's also playing a melody with your other hand. Is that essentially what it's doing? Or so you're a one-man band, basically. It sounds.
I just need to have cymbals on my knees. That's all.
To your point, what Steve had told me was that because of the way the instrument is strung, you can actually find chord voicings in that instrument you can't find anywhere else.
Right.
You can't get it on a 6-string guitar, which Steve plays very well. You can't get it on a piano. So Olivia's right. By going off in that direction and getting the sort of, unusual instrument, the instrument itself is going to inspire music that you wouldn't have written on any other one. And also, what I like about you, Dale, is that I can count the female stick players I'm aware of on one finger.
There's starting to be more.
Right, but what I like about you is it's not a novelty in your case. It's not like, look at me, I'm a female playing instrument. You play it really well. You have a handle on it. Well, after all this talk about music, I think it's time to listen to some. One of my very favorite songs of yours is called Beautiful Wonder. I want to give that a listen. I mean, it's nice music, nice lyrics. You can really sort of sense the Chapman stick in there, and some sort of CSN moments too, with the nice harmonies. So, why don't you tell us what inspired that song?
It's actually also my husband's favorite song. So you guys are mushy guys. You're a bunch of mushy guys. It's inspired by my daughter's play school teacher. She's one of those higher life forms that just knows how to communicate with like little ones, and she's very, very good at what she does. And so, value of the teacher, value of a woman who was helping to help me be a better parent, because this was 3-year-old play school, right? So she's an incredible human being.
Well, let's give it a listen. Our guest, Dale Ladoucer, and her composition, Beautiful Wonder.
Can you come back tomorrow? Do you really think you can? I bring my truck to show you what a beautiful wonder I am. I'm thinking you can take my little hand and take me through the new words, a new land. Keep me safe from all the bad. Keep my eyes from feeling sad. And I know that as I grow, you surely will be thinking that I'll forget about these days. And I don't know how tired you get, 'cause all I see is smiling eyes teaching me the ways to grow. I got a ways to go. Metamorphosis, solar system, a triceratops. Good for you, good listening. And when the day is done, and when I close my eyes, your songs and your stories are gonna take my dreams to fly. There's a lesson to learn yet from all of these play school days I never ever will forget. There's really just no way to tell, but I believe I really will be well on my way to go. I got a way to go. I got a way to go. Can you come back tomorrow? Do you really think you can? I bring my doll to show you all the beautiful, wonderful.
Wow, I love that. It is just so unique, your voice and your rhythms. It reminded me of. I hate that when people say it reminded me of all of that, but it distinctively, like rhythmically, which funnily enough has total jazz intonations. It reminded me of something that Nick Drake would have written. Because poor boy, you know that?
Yeah.
Poor boy, da, 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 and it's like the piano, these kind of, it's almost like a rolling jazz kind of rhythm that kind of just is, it's sort of, it's kind of euphoric, and you just kind of want to hear it again and again. And interestingly enough, I heard a lot of Joni in your harmonies, which, because you have this wonderful falsetto, but you also have a bass, like not unlike the instrument that you play. You know, that you're probably, inadvertently, you don't even realize you're doing it subconsciously. Maybe you're kind of feeling the bass tonality in what you're playing, and you're sort of, singing that too, which
that's the first time anybody's ever said that. And that you're mind blown.
And another thing that I heard, which I really was digging, was there's this Swedish artist, which you may or may not, I'm sure you've heard of him by this stage. His name's Sufjan Stevens. Oh. And if you haven't heard of him, you got to check him out, both you guys, because he made, speaking of prog rock and kind of medieval music, there's a little bit of that, but it's almost like the music of the immigrants, that moved here all those years ago, that comes from distinctively sort of from their country, and I guess his is Sweden, but his plight was very specific, and his objective musically was very specific, was to make an album for every state in America, and he's still in the process of doing that. His music, has been in a number of films now, these kind of intimate indie personal films where directors just kind of hear his voice, and the simplicity yet sophistication of the musicians that he works with, and the instruments that he chooses to use, which are really unusual. But you should check him out. But yeah, loved it. I gave it a 22.
As far as my own notes on that recording, I wrote down 3 things. Interestingly, okay. one of them is the same that Olivia said. The rhythm, it's an interesting rhythm. It flows along like a river, but it's not 4/4. You can tell. And I think also because that. I
think it's a waltz.
It's a result of tapping on the stick. I think that clear sound everybody's hearing is the Chapman stick. You can hear it really well in that recording when you set up the groove. And so the fact that it shows off the sound of the stick, that it has that sort of atypical rhythm. And the third thing is I did catch the reference to Play School that time. I heard the word Play School pop out, which is pretty cool.
And I forgot to mention that I asked her, I said, how did you become this Play School teacher? Did you always want to be one? And she goes, I was going to be a gym teacher for high school. And then she stepped in for this friend of hers that just for a day, because she was sick. And this little boy at the end of this incredible day, this little boy with big saucer blue eyes looked up at her and said, "Can you come back tomorrow?" And so that was the song. Yeah.
Well, we need to wrap up this episode, but there's still more to say. So we want to invite you to come back next week. Is that something you think you can manage?
Absolutely.
Well, we do have one little outgoing piece of music here to share with everybody. It's not one of Dale's tunes, but it is one that Dale name checked. So we're going to go out with that. So thanks very much for joining us. And thanks everybody for listening, and come back next Friday for more Dale.
Lovely having you, Dale.
Thank you, Olivia. Thank you, Dan.
God bless.
Peace.